Welcome to the channel. This is an overview video for the 5 points 1960 custom map for Workers and Resources Soviet Republic. And this video will consist of two parts. In the first part, I'll just go over the reason why I made the map, the general layout, focusing very much on the what I would call the recommended starting location. And then we'll go out and look at some of the topographical features, and I'll explain the reason why they're there and what some of the challenges of the map are. The second part will go round the various other starting locations for anyone who's looking for a different type of challenge. But I will give you a warning that in the second part of the video, there'll be some kind of hints towards where some of the resources are located, but I cannot give specific locations simply because I can't remember where I actually put them. All I can do is talk about why you'd want to start in these locations and what the potential benefits are. So let's just get into the first part of the video, and I'm currently looking at the starting location, and as you can see here, it's actually almost in the center of the map. And this is the reason why I started putting this together, because one thing that I've always wanted to do, almost since the game started out, because if any of you play the game regularly, you'll be aware that you normally end up starting on the border and then you start growing out towards the center, and quite often you never really get to the center, and it's very difficult to kind of cover the whole map with a very advanced economy, simply because it takes so much time to get out the center. So when the devs gave the option to edit the border, and I thought this is my opportunity to finally be able to start in the center with a custom shed rather than a port. And then the idea is that you start in the center and you grow out and exploit the resources around the map. Originally, this map was meant for an early 1900 start, and there is going to be a version that will be published at the same time, which is going to be that original map. So this is a modified version, and what I'm pitching at is this is aimed at new players who are just looking to get a relatively easy start, players who want a bit of a challenge, but at the same time they don't want to get into the really kind of tough capability, and for players who just want to enjoy the experience, but they don't really want to get into kind of the real tough level of developing a hard economy. And of course, if you're just someone who wants to build a cool looking city, I think this might be a good opportunity, because generally the terrain in this area is flat. Because if you look here, you see most of the rough terrain is deliberately around the edge. And the reason for that is that as the map started to grow, I thought, well, I didn't want a big flat map, but I wanted something to look a bit different. Then it evolved into thinking about giving reasons to use ships more, and also aircraft, because one of my big dilemmas with aircraft, and I'll be completely upfront, is that generally when I get to aircraft, I just use it for exporting across the border. So I thought it'd be quite a good idea to actually give a reason to actually use aircraft to move goods around the map. So this is why you've got the kind of layout of the water and the slightly deep gullies as well. We'll be taking a look at those in a minute. So that's the reason for the structure of the map. And then I kind of started working on the backstory, and the backstory is that you've been sent here to develop the resources for the benefit of the Republic, but most of the resources are away from the center, so you've got to get out and expand to bring those resources online to develop the economy. What's the starting location? Well, the starting location is here. If I zoom in here, now I'll be completely upfront, it was a bit of a difficult start to do, because I was trying to strike a balance between kind of allowing anybody to play this, even somebody who's completely new and somebody who's looking for a bit of experience. So in the end, I finally opted to add electricity, but then it didn't look right with a power supply here and no connection. So I kind of put this building in here. And the way to think of it is it's like some kind of tidal power station, but it's not. It's just a normal boarded building, because I didn't want to put a mod restriction on the map. And then what we've got is a full-size custom shed here with the rail capacity, and I put a little rail line in here to this port to kind of hint that the trains are being imported by ship and then being made available at this custom shed. And this area here is called 5.3 port, but the actual focus is the cathedral up here, which is where 5 points are. So this is a very broad hint to say This is your entry point. This is where you can get a bit of industry, and this is where you want to start building your main town up. But one tip I will say is that given the new update, this is the waste and maintenance update, you probably don't want to bring your main roads through the center of town because of potential traffic problems. And then the reason why the map's called 5 points is, if I draw out here, you see there's 5 roads out this way. Now, originally I had 5 roads just spreading out on this landmass here, but as you can see, things got a little bit out of control, and there's 2 reasons for that. The first one is I actually used the water erosion tool to get the layout of the map, and while it's fun to use, it does produce a lot of rough terrain. So eventually I started creating roads through some of the rougher terrain, and to be able to support aid anyone who's looking for a route to expansion. And then of course, if I come here, you'll see that I've got these very deep gullies. What I decided to do was actually provide the roads up the sides, and the reason for that is that these were hard enough to make using the full capacity of the map editor. I doubt very much if you'd be able to cut these roads up through here if using the actual normal in-game editors. So what I've done is I've created this area here. Now, one tip I will say is that the reason I put these roads in, there are opportunities or reasons why you may want to come down here. And of course, one of the more important ones is that you may want to put a port here, be able to send some of the goods down to your map economy here, because of course you've got a local a border connection there. If I come over to this one is a bit more straightforward. It's just a kind of a crossing there, but I had to get up through here, so you've got a road coming this way. If I come up to the next one, just going to give you a quick tour. I mean, they've all got various levels of extreme. This one is kind of comes down, it winds all over the rock face, and this is kind of meant to represent a flooded valley. So the challenge here is, do you reclaim the land and level it? Because of course what you could do is just keep this open as a shipping channel. I mean, that's a strategic decision you're going to have to make. And then of course you've got this road up here. Down here, this is a little bit more of a kind of open area. Again, you've got this opportunity to build a port here, and then of course you've got the road coming down here. And I think this is the one where I had to put a tunnel in because the water erosion created this. So this one's actually got a tunnel through to here and then up over the side. Now, there's absolutely no reason why you need to use this. I mean, you could, if you wanted to, quite literally just put major railway viaducts over here. I mean, they'd be expensive to build, but of course what you can do is just pick your way through these areas so that you can connect things up, because as these roads illustrate, that if you want to go for the kind of land routes, you can feed everything into 5 points in the center. And this is the whole idea behind this map, that all roads lead to the center. Now, I think just to wind this section up, I need to talk 2 other things. The first one is, you see these black blobs on the map. These are meant to representing lakes, and as you can see here, I've already put an example in here. And what this is, if I just let it build, just to show you. Now, this is actually a mod, because if you try to put in the normal sewage discharge here, because this is not a kind of surface level lake, they will not let you build this. So if you want to build a town out here and you want to take advantage of the waste disposal, what you're going to have to do is use this sewage discharge mod here, which is the one what I've built there. Was the consequence of the most recent update, which is maintenance and waste. Because if you run these sewage disposal points along remote locations, which is what we've been doing prior to this update, there's a possibility that they would not be maintained and then collapse. So these black dots have been put in specifically to provide that support for being able to dump water. Of course, you can always just go close to one of these cliff edges and dump over there, but again, you will probably need the mod, because you won't be able to get down to the water very easily. And then finally, in this section, I put this kind of extinct volcano here, just because I felt that this side of the map was a bit too flat. So I put a couple of this big feature over here. Serves no purpose, but It looks quite interesting. And I think I've just got one more feature to show you, which is here. And this is a bit of a very broad hint that we've got a kind of area here where you could build a fairly nice port here. And what all I would say is that there is a pretty good reason for actually doing this. There's some key resources in this area. That's why this port is actually here. But of course, I'm not going to tell you where the resources are. And I think this brings this first section to an end. So again, if you're just interested in starting in the center over here, this is where I suggest that you stop watching. And I'd like to say a big thank you for watching the video. If you're interested in the map, feel free to subscribe and play. Get any problems, feel free to just put it into the map description and I'll take a look at where those problems are. I have fairly substantially play tested this, so I'm reasonably confident things will go. Oh, there's one other thing I need to mention, which I did come up in play testing. This section here you cannot bridge because of this. Effectively, this little narrow slot here is the outside the map. So, but what you can do is cross here using ferries. So again, it's another reason for using another form of transport. So be aware that you can't build bridges across this bit here. Aircraft and ships will quite happily cross through here from point to point. And so what I'm going to do now is just move on to the second section. If you decided to continue watching, welcome to the second section of this video. I am going to start with a potential spoiler alert, in the sense that while I'm not going to reveal exact locations, there will be some pretty broad hints relating to some resource locations, but these will mainly be around the outside. I'm not going to give you any hints related to this starting location. So, but of course, watching this section will give you an idea of where you may want to expand this central location. So if you're completely new and you're looking for a little bit of guidance, feel free to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the corner down here, because if you look at the top here, you see we've got a population of 638, and they are all concentrated in this little village on the edge of the map here. And this has been put in simply for anyone who, I wouldn't say wants to play on a hard populated map, but maybe you just want to get a feel of what it's like to start with a populated map. So we've got this small little town here. As I say, you start with a population of 638. If you don't want to play on a populated map, you just remove the population as part of the setup. The starting location here is a medium customs house. So it means it's got a rail connection. What I will say is, in this area, you've probably, well, I'll talk about it more generally first now. The one resource I will talk about fairly specifically is coal. Now, if any of you worked with the text editor, you'll be aware that when you create a map, the game randomly creates resources across the map, and it's quite kind of spread out all over the place, and it's often you get very thin deposits. What I've done is, for coal, is I've left most of that in and just edited it and deepened some areas to provide areas of coal which we could support industry. Generally across the map there are coal available. In fact, if I come to about here, we'll just do a little bit of prospecting. If I do a bit of prospecting in this area, by prospecting, what you do is you come here. Some concentrations of coal on the map, but they are very poor. And so back to the populated map, there's a bit of, as I say, it's a bit of a broad hint here that if you really want to kind of get up and running here and you want to use coal powered heating, there is an opportunity in this area to get fairly early access to coal. And another very broad tip is, so if you're looking for iron, look into the hills, and that's basically the part of the story, is the resources are in the hills. And I think that's all I can really say about the populated start. The next one I've put in just for a bit of fun, actually, for someone who's looking for a little bit of a different challenge. Now, the custom shed for the Soviet is a small one, so there's no rail connection here. But, and this is the kind of, if you're looking for something that's maybe a little bit different, what we got up here is a full-sized NATO custom shed and also a NATO power supply. So unlike virtually all the other starting locations, the power in this corner comes from NATO, not from the Soviet Republic. And the idea behind that, you can see we've also got, and you can also see that we've got a little bit of a river here, although there's a tree in the middle. One of the hazards, I thought I'd got rid of them all. But the kind of starting concept here is starting off as a small area here, working closely with NATO, exporting to and from NATO. And of course, what this does is it gives you relatively early access to NATO vehicles. And the original reason for this is the fact that if you start in 1900, you quite often need Western vehicles to plug some of the gaps for the first kind of 20, 30, 40 years of a playthrough. So the idea is that would be available. Resource wise in here, it's similar to what I was talking about previously. There's some fairly good deposits of coal and iron around here, but I've got no idea where that actually is. Of course, what you've got is this port access fairly close as well. So again, it kind of spins in quite nicely with the NATO starting location. It's also worth noting that the borders here have got blue sections in, and the reason for that is to allow aircraft to find easier paths off the route. So for example, say you're building an airport up in the mountains here to export a valuable resource, it will go to this corner of the border, it won't travel all the way over to there. So I think that's all there is to talk about that one. We'll go now to the next one. This is a start for somebody who's looking for something that's pretty difficult. This border post has no power supply. It's a medium with a single rail track. You can see the terrain's quite rough and obviously quite restricted. And what you're going to need to do is get out through here. And what I will say is that if you want to develop this plateau up here, there's some pretty good resources in this area, but they're not all concentrated in one location. But if you've got the time and patience to grow out from here, there is a potential to get a pretty strong early economy going. But what I will suggest is that you do need to get the research done relatively quickly to be able to take advantage of those resources. Now, if we come over to here, and we've got a small, again, this is very much a small customs post, and we've got a power connection here. What I will say is that for an experienced player, this will be an easy start. So if you're looking to be able to get your economy up and running and making lots of money from the get-go, this is your real starting location. And what I will say is that you're just looking for black gold. And just to give you another kind of very broad hint using research, one thing that you may want to kind of research relatively quickly is this tech here: foreign pipeline connections to the Soviet Republic. And that's all I'm going to say in this area, guys. I mean, obviously we've got some marshes here which will take a little bit of leveling off, but this is by far the easiest start for a player that wants to get momentum very quickly and earlier in the game. Of course, you've got no rail connection, which is deliberate, because I think if there'd been a rail connection here as well, it would have been a ridiculously easy start. That is the major locations, and just to give you a more sweeping position, what I will say is there are plenty of resources on the map. I won't classify this map as hard in any shape, form or description as previously. So if you're looking for a bigger challenge, I suggest that you play on the 5.1900 version, which is going to be a lot more of a challenge. The only other thing I will say, and I'll just go back to this area here, is you can see very much by the terrain that gravel is not a problem, because again, this is a product of the water erosion, so you'll find gravel everywhere. And the only other thing I will say is, for anyone who's wants a bit more information on this start here, the ground is flat enough for some very extensive farming. Again, just to reiterate what I said in the first part, if you look for the terrain, and of course, as I've already shown you, if you do a bit of prospecting in this area, if you come to fossil fuels, coal mine, you'll see that you can get very small deposits of coal. And that's really for new players. That this starting location may look a bit daunting, but it is relatively easy once you know the basics of the game. And I think I better stop here, because otherwise what's going to happen is that I'm going to give away too much. So hope you enjoyed this overview. Any questions or opinions, problems, feel free to put it in the video description and I'll see what I can do about it. But until next time, whatever you do, enjoy your gaming.